So like I said, we're going to start immediately. Like I said, you need to give the style of the original text, and you need to sound more eloquent. You need to sound like a fasih, a sheikh who's using like that level of Arabic. Okay. Someone asked why I used a hyphen, right? Who asked that? Someone asked why I used a hyphen. Yes. Now, remember when I said punctuation has meaning?
Yes.
Good. Yes. Now, in Arabic, repetition of and or are normal and acceptable, and you have to do them. You have to keep saying wa wa wa, and you have to keep saying ow ow ow. Okay? In English, you don't add and every time you connect between things, and you don't repeat or. Okay? Now, here, or being repeated, although it's necessary in Arabic, it also gives meaning. Although it's necessary in Arabic, it also gives meaning. مكث ألف سنة أو ألفين أو أكثر أو أقل. So here, the repetition of أو is structurally necessary, and at the same time, it emphasizes that you don't know how long you're going to stay in the grave. You don't know if it is 1,000 years or 2,000 years or more or less. So now I understand the source text. Let's come to the target text. If I don't use the hyphen and I keep repeating, it could be 1,000 years or 2 or more or less, it doesn't feel natural in English. Okay? So adding the hyphen is like, I'm telling you that I'm cutting it into two parts. So a year, 1,000 year or 2 or more or less. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question? Okay. Mariam, your question.
I just want to make sure, is this a hyphen or a dash?
Hyphen, dash, كلهم واحد. Doesn't يعني مش مشكلة كبيرة.
No, because I have something in my mind that dash are always for adding information, adding phrases, and so.
أنا فعليا بحسش إنه يعني it makes يعني it just doesn't make sense إنه يكون في فرق بينهم. It's just a hyphen or a dash. بس هي فعليا هاي الكبيرة. بس هو فعليا أنت لما بتكتبي على مايكروسوفت وورد تمام تعملي سبيس وتكتبي فهو لحاله بيطولها. يعني هي بتكون صغيرة وهو لحاله بيطولها. تمام؟ بس هو فعليا سواء طويلة أو صغيرة just I don't see the difference. طبعا أنت لو دورتي على الديكشنري مش الديكشنري سوري البنكشويشن جايد هيشرح لك كل واحدة بإيش تستخدم. بس أنا بحس يعني it's just a sign whether you use the short one or the long one doesn't make a difference. مريم.
I said. Thank you.
Mariam, you're raising your hand. Do you want to say anything?
I already said.
Oh, okay. Anyone has any other question before we move forward? Okay. قالت السيدة الأولى السابقة للولايات المتحدة ميشيل أوباما إنه لم يكن هناك مفاجأة كاملة, and I think we said that if the original text or the text, the source text that you're translating from has a quotation that belongs to the target text and has been translated, you need to what? You need to what?
ترجع
To
للنص
Google the first text
Good.
or the source text.
Good. So you bring back the original source text to its original language. So Michelle Obama, former First Lady of the USA, فيش حاجة هنا, said it wasn't a complete surprise to hear the Duchess of Sussex talk of racism in a recent TV interview. فيش إشي جديد, Mrs. Obama. Yeah, السيدة Obama. It's important to say Mrs., not Miss, because you know the difference between Miss and Mrs. And usually we use Mrs. when we have the name of the male, the name of the man, the name of the husband. So the last name of the husband with, like, if you want to talk about his wife using the last name of the husband, you say Mrs. Obama. So if I say Mrs. Abbas, you understand that I'm talking about the wife of Abbas. If I say Mrs. I don't know, Mrs. El Borno, so this is a woman who's married to a man who has the last name as El Borno. Okay, so Mrs. Obama talked on NBC's Today Show. It doesn't, like, in Arabic, إلى برنامج Today على شبكة NBC. Do I need to translate this to on Today's Show that is broadcasted on NBC NBC network? Does that make sense in English? Or is it just easier to say on NBC's Today Show?
It's known that NBC's Today Show is like on TV.
Yeah, it's on NBC, right? So it makes more sense than saying talked on Today's Show that is broadcasted on NBC, on the American NBC TV or network or whatever. Okay. About Meghan and Prince Henry's interview with Oprah Winfrey, I don't think there are any problems here. Meghan and Harry revealed personal details about racism and mental health. Meghan said that one of the royals, whose name she kept anonymous, asked Harry how black their unborn son Archie was. I don't think there are any problems here. Okay. وقال القصر الملكي. Now, تعرفوا البيت الأبيض؟ وقال البيت الأبيض.
Yeah.
Yes.
The White House. إيش القصد في البيت الأبيض؟ مين هو البيت الأبيض؟ اللي هو
President.
presidential like palace إذا بدنا نستخدم يعني like عشان القصر يعني. I'm using inverted.
الكود الأمريكي كان
نعم.
هو نفسه الكود الأمريكي.
إيش؟ هو نفسه إيش؟
الليكود، حزب الليكود أو إشي هي.
لا، حزب الليكود هذا في إسرائيل. ما فيش حزب ليكود في أمريكا. في أمريكا إيش الأحزاب؟ الديمقراطيين ومين؟
الشيوخ أظن.
والجمهوريين.
والجمهوريين، صحيح، الديمقراطيين والجمهوريين. تمام. So similar to البيت الأبيض, we have in Britain القصر الملكي. Okay? It represents يعني ذكر الجزء وقصد الكل. تمام. So although, like, what if we say the royal palace? Makes sense, بس هو اسمه Buckingham Palace, but we just use Buckingham Palace. So the Buckingham Palace described the race issues raised by. See, قال has been translated to described. Why? Because if you use said, you're going to need to have more words later on to explain what they said. But if you use a verb like described, and then you just add as concerning, makes more sense, feels more natural. And look at how the age, البالغة من العمر كذا وكذا, turned into an adjective that preceded the noun, the name, sorry, that preceded the name. Again, to have a more natural English text, and would be taken seriously and dealt with by the royal family privately. There are no problems here. So let's get to the real stuff. I think we took this like the first day I knew I was your teacher, right? I think that I sent these on the first day of our journey together. And I have read all of your translations. And we did mention that they were all like, you kept the same tone, you kept the same words, you kept the same educational level of language, and so on. So let's look at the translations together. We already analyzed the source texts in previous lectures, so we're going to look at the translations only. ازيك يا ابني عامل ايه؟ Hey boy, how's it been? طمني عنك. أنا كنت قلقانة عليك. طمني عنك isn't like, doesn't have an equivalent in English. And by doesn't have an equivalent, we don't say like طمني عنك. Like how do they say طمني عنك? Just it's more like, yeah, exactly. It's how are you? It's how have you been? So عامل ايه? طمني عنك have the same meaning. And like we mentioned earlier, sometimes you take, like if it's been repeated, you take out one or two of the repeated words. So I've been worried about you. أنا كنت قلقانة عليك. Now notice here that the word have has been omitted. Okay? I've been worried about you. كلمت الست والدتك وقالت إنك بقيت دكتور قد الدنيا. Talk to your old woman. She said you now hotshot doc. I'm so happy for you. Now, I'm asking you this question. Do you think that in an English context, it gives a similar sense to the source text that we have here? If someone who speaks English or is a native English speaker reads this text, would he feel similar to how an Arab would read the source text or not? So yes or no?
It is the same level.
Good. Why? How do we know that? Because so many things have been taken out. It's grammatically correct to a great extent. I mean, in the source text, it's somewhat like it makes sense. Like it's not grammatical, but to like, if you consider the Egyptian dialect, you consider how Egyptians speak, it makes sense. And there are no great changes in the pronunciation, and there are no great changes in the grammar. The structures are somewhat complete. So in the target text, same thing. The pronunciation isn't like it's some words have been taken out, right? Some sounds have been taken out, and the words like كلمت الست والدتك, it's not just your mom. So الست والدتك, your old woman, they use this. Your old man, referring to the father, your old woman, referring to the mother. So الست والدتك is not just your mom. Do you understand what I mean? It would have changed something about the text if you just said mom. Okay? Let's move to the second one. السلام عليكم يا ولدي. Notice that in the first translation it was boy, and boy here doesn't necessarily mean he's young, so it could refer to a grown-up and a male adult, okay, or adult male. So here it is my child, and you would notice that child is a neutral word, and an old man or an old woman would usually refer to in an official context. Let's say he's a sheikh or something, he would say my child. I want you to imagine an old man or an old lady who lives in the city and has a good level of education and is like talking to to someone who's, say, 25 years old and addressing them by my child. Makes sense to a great extent. So child here doesn't mean baby, doesn't mean someone who's like 18. It can refer to someone who's old, because the person who is talking is older. So basically, he perceives him or she perceives him as a child. لقد قلقت عليك فاتصلت بأمك وأخبرتني أنك صرت طبيبا ناجحا لقد سعدت من أجلك. So let's look at the vocabulary. I was concerned about you. So a moment ago it was worried. I've been worried about you. Here it is concerned. So I called your mother, not your old woman, your mother, and not your mom. Notice like how the words have been selected. She said, you have grown to become a successful doctor. I'm very pleased for you, not happy for you, pleased. So the lexicon, the words that have been chosen, they're different from the first text. You're choosing less common words because this is a less common, or let's say a more official Arabic. Okay? Let's look at the third one. They all have the same meaning. They still have the same meaning. The first and the second still have the same semantics, same meaning. But the syntax is different. The style is different. And to a great extent, matches the source texts. Ead, yo, kiddo. Notice that the transcription, how the word was written in English is different from how it's usually written. They say kiddo. Kiddo exists in English, but it's like adding the W isn't in English, okay? So why did we add the W? Because you want to show that this is not someone who's educated, someone who doesn't live in the city maybe, someone whose language is, I don't want to say broken, but it is broken, because when you keep moving, like read the other parts, you would notice that there are great changes in the structure and even in the pronunciation. انت فين ما بتسألش? So what up? What up? Like here, what up? Why you no call us? Is different from what we did in the first part. In the first part, she said, عامل ايه؟ طمني عنك. And we translated it to one thing. How's it been? Right? Here we did the opposite. In the Arabic text, انت فين ما بتسألش? It turned to what up? Why you no call us? انت فين معناها كيف حالك. تمام؟ انت فين معناها كيف حالك. ما بتسألش why you no call us. طيب why here مع انه انت فين ما بتسألش ما فيهاش يعني مشاكل كتير واضحة. ليش هنا غيرنا كتير؟ يعني what up, it's not grammatical. Why you no call us, it's not grammatical. لانه later on هنا انا كمترجم عندي فرصة ممتازة اني اني اعوض عن شيء بعد هيك اخسره. يعني انا هنا عوضت قبل ما اخسر، لاني دنا قوي اني امك, these words I won't be able to compensate for. So from the beginning, I know what I'm going to lose later, so I compensate before I lose. Can I do that? Yes, because we said that as long as we compensate at the same level, it's good. Where you compensate isn't a problem. It's not about the where, it's about the how you compensate. I've been worried about you. Notice that the has been taken out, again, to indicate that the person who's talking is not from the city, is not does not have an educational background, for example. Talk to your mama, not mom, not your old woman, not mother. Talk to your mama. So it's let's say the one that is usually used by the, I don't want to say the lower class, but it's the one that's common among people who don't speak the standard language. She said, you're a big doc now. So notice that doc replaces doctor. Doctor is at a phonetic level. Doc is also at a phonetic level. Ain't you coming home soon for a bride? تعال نفرح بيك. So I just want you to, I hope that by looking at these three translations, you understand what I've been trying to tell you all along since we started our first lecture. That it's not just about translating meaning. It's not just about putting words together in the target text or in the target language. It's about understanding the connection between the source text and its surroundings and creating the same connection between the target text and its surroundings. And you need to understand that every lexical choice, every structural choice has direct relation to the context, to the speaker, to the listener, to the connotations of the words, to the denotations of the words, and so on. I want you to tell me now how you feel after reading the three translations. Do you feel like it makes sense? Like, yeah, like, how didn't I think about that? So how do you feel after reading the three translations? Or do you feel anything at all? Mariam.
Yeah, it makes sense and makes me like feel the same feeling of the Arabic one. But
Good.
I wanted to ask or to wonder how you get this translation. How would I will know like a duk and kiddo? I know.
طيب فعليا هذا بعد عمر طويل إن شاء الله وتجارب في الحياة وتشتغل كتير بيصير في عندك somewhat like creativity, thinking outside the box زي ما بيقولوا, and you know, like I can't tell you how you can get to it, but I can tell you that you can get to something like it. It doesn't have to be like this, but you can get to something like it.
Miss, I have a concept. I don't know if I am right or not. If I am wrong, correct me. I think that both languages have different dialects, but the translator can like face these differences in spoken language more than written one.
Okay.
Is that?
You're saying that dialects are spoken, they're not written, right? That's your question. Right? وين رحتي؟ Man.
Here I am. I didn't hear you. Could you please repeat?
You said dialects are spoken, they're not written. Isn't that what you mean?
Mm-hmm. Different.
Okay.
They differ. Mm.
Now, dialects are how people speak. And how people speak has been moved into novels and books. Number one, you would find this, like we said, in novels, stories, and even poetry. Sometimes when you translate slogans or advertisements. So it's not just heard. No, it's actually problematic when it's written. Because when you interpret, for example, when you interpret, you don't usually do the whole, I need to keep the same level of education, I need to keep the same level of style, and so on. In interpretation, you translate meaning. So dialects are problematic when they're written, and they are written, like I mentioned in literature. And sometimes someone might write an article about a particular, let's say, people, and when you translate, you want to maintain the same level of sense, the same level of education of the speakers. So you will have to, again, translate them in a way to indicate that they're not being properly said, but mostly in literature. Does this answer your question or not?
Yes, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Miss, لو سمحتي,
Yes.
you said that like this translation like this need create. Do you mean that we can produce a new word, or I can't understand?
Yeah. Yes. Creativity is ibda, not ibtikar, but like both. What I mean is sometimes you can add something to the language, but they say doc, like knock, knock. You know, it's not awkward to say doc, hey doc. So it's not awkward. So it's not created,
Yeah.
it's not invented. But generally you can, like kiddo here, it's not there, but you can add it to indicate something. It's fine. It's fine to add or create things. Yes. Noor.
Hi. Well, like if it was the opposite, if I was asked like to translate the English ones, am I supposed to translate them like in the Egyptian accent?
Yeah. Not necessarily Egyptian. Like I think one of you asked this question before. To which dialect do I translate? The idea is that it depends. Number one, it depends where you're translating, where, like in which country, who your commissioner is, who your audience are. These are factors that affect your translation. But most of the time, you're usually like forced to base your translation on the expected audience. So if, for example, you're working with a publishing home from the Gulf, you would usually translate it in dialects that are from the Gulf. This isn't awkward and this isn't strange because if you look for books, you would find that there are so many books that have been translated multiple times. Like there would be 10 to 15 translations of one book. And it's not awkward again, because like every publishing home, every commissioner has his own vision of how this book needs to be translated. And I think we mentioned this as factors. So basically I chose here the Egyptian dialect in the source text for no reason. Like I was just in the mood for the Egyptian dialect, and because it's like I like the Egyptian dialect and it shows you the actual changes in pronunciation and the differences, because the different dialects of Arabic in Gaza, for example, or across the Gaza Strip, they're not that different. They have like similar vocabulary, similar pronunciation, and so on. Any other questions? So to answer that question again, it depends.
And practice makes perfect. So we need to practice to know more about how
Yeah.
to translate or into
It
which.
takes practice, and it takes love. It takes practice and love. You need to love what you're doing. Any other questions before we move to our final chapter of today's long lecture? Okay. وحد الله يا زلمة. مين بده يترجم لنا إياها؟
Noor, can I?
Yeah.
Calm down, man. I like this.
Okay, good. What else?
Stop it.
Relax.
Relax makes sense. Yes. What else?
Say لا إله إلا الله.
Be
Say that
patient.
there is no God except for Allah and Muhammad is his messenger. تخيلي تحكي لواحد هيك. تمام. Okay, so here we discussed this as part of untranslatability, and we said that sometimes the religious connections of a certain sentence are unnecessary in the target text if there are no similar connections in the target text. وحد Allah يا زلمة, why did he say وحد Allah? To calm the person down, right? Basically, calm down, dude, chill out, man, relax, dude. So again, you don't use religious connotations or connections in English because there are no religious connections. ألف الحمد لله على السلامة.
Congratulations.
ألف الحمد لله على السلامة, مش ألف مبروك.
Oh,
Syrian?
Thanks God for your safety.
Do they say thanks God for your safety in English?
will
I
soon.
don't actually know, but
I
I
am
want.
glad you are fine.
خليها تكمل لو سمحتي. تفضلي يا سيرين.
But I've once read this translation in a book.
Okay. They don't usually include God when, like, in words like congratulations, مثلا الحمد لله على السلامة كذا, they don't usually include God. Someone was talking and I told her to be patient. مين كانت تحكي?
Yes,
Yes.
I'm
okay.
glad you're fine.
I'm glad you're fine. Excellent. So they usually do that. Like, I'm glad you're fine. I hope you're getting better. I hope you get better. Now, how am I going to do the alf part? I hope you get really well really soon. So the repetition of really well really soon to indicate like the stress. Alf alhamdulillah salam. Really well really soon. Okay. بطير العقل طار عقله. Here I added this because بطير العقل, although it is the same words, generally they have different meanings. So بطير العقل blows one's mind, يعني it's very إيش بنقول؟ بطير العقل يعني حلو كتير. It blows one's
Very
mind.
beautiful.
Yeah. And طار عقله, he's out of his mind. الآن لو كانوا التنتين تمام محطوطين مع بعض في سياق إلى حد ما موجود, فأنت بدك تحافظي على mind. ليش؟ عشان يعني to not to lose it all, you know. So blows out somewhat, he's out, blows, repeating the same sounds. Again, compensation at the sound level. Yes, في حد حكى miss?
Yes, me. Can we say it's walk, or like to use an expression to describe تغير العقل يعني.
ماشي إذا كانت لحالها, لكن أنا هنا جايباهم إنهم لو كانوا في نفس الفقرة, يعني هو متعمد يكرر نفسه بطير العقل طار عقله كنوع من الجناس.
Okay,
تمام.
thank you.
إذا كانوا منفصلين يعني طير عقله بطير العقل it wowed him, ممتاز, فيش أي مشكلة. تمام.
Okay, great. Okay.
The House of Lords put it in the old man reminiscently. The House of Lords, if you like, we said that the difference between is the ha sound. So how do we do it? تمام. مجلس اللوردات أو مجلس اللوردات in shit. The ga is actually internationally commonly used, not internationally, like at an Arab level. في الدول العربية غالبا في يعني دول كتير بتحكي بدل الجيم جا, وفي كل يعني مجلس اللوردات الإشي الوحيد اللي أنت بتقدري تلعبي فيه من حيث الصوت هي مين؟ الجيم. ممكن حد يقول طب ليش مثلا مش الصا السين نحولها صا؟ محدش في الدنيا بيستخدم يعني بدل السين صا. مش عارفة في حد بيستخدم بدل السين بيقول مجلس صر, ما أظنش. It's not common. So again it makes sense to do مجلس اللوردات. Now, based on everything that we've explained today, this is your new homework. I'm going to post it on Facebook, and I want you to reply within 4 days, 5 days, and no more than 5 days. من اليوم وإن شاء الله لاحقا 5 days يعني 5 days. خلينا نوقف التسجيل ونشوف مين عنده سؤال.